Hey there, Permajagan here. Happy to see you. Today we are going to see how to set up a Sliver C2. We're going to learn what is Sliver and how to set this up. Sliver is actually a formidable C2 framework. It's actually used by plenty of security researchers and also the attackers. So it's like a double-edged sword. It's all about how you're going to use it. So in this video, I'm going to set up the Sliver. It's quite easy, and also let's explore some basic things. So hopefully in future I'll be able to make multiple videos on Sliver. So if you learn and if you get comfortable with Sliver, it is possible to use it in various places. During your pen test, you'll be able to use it. During your red teaming assessments, you'll be able to use it. For AV, EDR evasion, it's possible to use Sliver. And also you can create your custom payload. You can use it with Sliver. So there are plenty of things that's going to follow. So without further ado, let's get started. Now you are seeing my screen. So this is a blog that I came across, and also I took an official documentation of Sliver, and also an incredible Medium blog that speaks Sliver. Okay, now let's see what is Sliver, and you can see it's, as I said, it's a C2 framework. It's a command line framework. From command line, you'll be able to use your Sliver setup, and the installation, it's quite simple. It's just a one-liner. All you need to do. So actually Sliver simplified its installation through this command. So I'm going to use this particular install bash script and show you how this client and server model works. In fact, this Sliver is actually works the client and server architecture. So let me cover that in a moment. But before that, so there are some few things that you need to understand. What is sessions, what is beacons, and here is an interesting an image that depicts the architecture of Sliver, and you can see this one. So this is actually the C2 server, let's say. So this is where the attacker sits. So the C2 server itself having two uh, uh, entity, I mean the two units. One is called the server and one is called the client. So I'm gonna cover that in a moment. But before that, let's understand what is C2. C2 is actually known as command and control. It is very popular term among threat actors and security researchers. And command and control server is something is gonna control uh, another machine. It's not controlling, not controlling, maybe kind of an instructor. So it's instructing another machine to do certain task, and it gets the response of the task from that particular machine. So that is how it works. It's kind of a client server stuff, and the client typically will be a victim machine, whichever got infected, and the C2 server is something like a controller, a master. So it's going to control this. It's going to send some commands to the victim machine. So actually the C2 implant is nothing but a program, an application or binary that is running on a victim machine, which is going to collect the commands from the C2 server and execute the command and send the response to the C2 server, the attacker. So that's the basic stuff in this. And there are, there is a difference between these sessions and beacons. So sessions, I think it is better to cover this later. Before that, so here they actually told how to set up a lab. So in this particular blog, they in detail mentioned how to set up a Sliver lab that resembles the real attacker infrastructure. If you see the DNS server, they actually configured a local DNS server. They actually built a dedicated machine to act as a DNS server. Then they made the Sliver to interact with that. So look at this one. I guess they actually mentioned about setting up the DNS. MTLS is nothing but the encrypted channel for the communication. HTTPS, using HTTPS. So in this blog, they talk about setting up a Sliver lab. along with the DNS server. Yeah. Okay, so this is the official documentation page. So I think it covers plenty of details, but let's read through this one as well. I've enjoyed diving into more red teaming tools over last couple of weeks. Spoiler, there is about some theory. What is C2 framework? It's a command and control. I just explained. And most C2 frameworks comes with general base set of functionality: command execution, file transfer, encrypted communication, automated persistence, automated tasks, pivoting. So there are plenty of things, plenty of purposes that can be fulfilled by using these C2 frameworks. And Sliver is popular among them. One of the popular among them. And you can see the other licensed C2 frameworks. So these are all the paid C2 frameworks that you can pay and get. Uh, I haven't used I haven't used any of this, but Sliver is an open source, so it can be used. I mean, it's available on GitHub. You can use it for free. Some C2 basics. So let's see. There are some common language used when it comes to operating and using the C2 framework. Regardless of which one you choose, here is a quick rundown on some terms you might come across. Implant. Implant is actually a piece of code or a piece of binary, a piece of application that's going to be installed in your victim machine. So that is called implant. Beacon. So let's see what is beacon. Beacon is nothing but a term when the installed implant try to communicate with C2. That is what we call it as beacon, and can be interpreted as a pattern of communication between the target system and our C2 server. When a target system or a victim system try to communicate with C2, and that activity we call it as beaconing. So in C2 terminology, beaconing is nothing but that communication between victim machine and the C2 server. Then beacon can be interpreted as a pattern of communication between a target system and our C2 server. A target endpoint will periodically reach out to C2 server to check in and process any tasks issued from the server. Beacon interval is normally randomized for evasion and stealth purposes. So previously we have seen two terms, sessions and beacons. Session is actually a stable communication, a stable connection between client and server, C2 server and the victim. The beacon is nothing but periodical connection. So it is not gonna communicate C2. It's not a continue its communication with C2 forever. Instead, it's gonna communicate C2 periodically, occasionally. So that's the purpose of, and that makes the beacon more stealthy. Jitter normally refers the random delay, sometimes in seconds, between beaconing intervals, pretty much just random delay between agent reaching out to the C2 server. So whenever you heard the term, hear the word jitter, it stands for the term delay. Staged payload. Of course, the term payload refers to the piece of code we want to execute on a target system. Staged part of this term refers to a small piece of code that will later load a bigger piece of code, kind of a dropper or in malware, kind of a loader in malware analysis. So it's a small piece of code that's gonna load another big piece of code, and that's the staged payload is all about. If you have a large payload to execute on a target system, it would set off an alarm bells at network and system level, or it would just really complex or use of a lot of bandwidth to execute outright. So staging this payload is essentially breaks it into different stages. So to load a bigger payload, they use this stage payload. Then BOF. So actually they tried explaining these terminologies. So let's understand this terminology before we get into the setup. BOF stands for beacon object file. So I'm also new to this stuff. Beacon object file is generally a custom code that can be written by the C2 operator that can interact and use C2 beacon APIs. It allows the ability for adding custom functionality and extending the capabilities of whichever C2 you choose to use it. To choose to use if it allows custom BOFs. Communications. When it comes to C2 servers, communication between the implant and the server is of course vital, but what is also just as important is their methods of communication. It needs to be reliable and covered. You will see a number of C2 servers communicate over DNS, HTTPS, MTLS. These are all the protocols that a C2 server typically used to communicate. And some cases even more obscure protocol. In some cases, C2 framework can even use third-party services like Discord, Slack, Telegram. So these are all the typical C2 frameworks that you would see to just for the evasion to dodge the security controls. So they do use this kind of security utilities. Okay, now uh, so here actually they covered it in a simple way. Now you get the good stuff. Sliver is a C2 framework designed for retimers and pen testers. Of course, it's capable of generating implants that run on pretty much any system architecture, which is an reason I love this framework. Okay, so blah blah blah, all these things. Sliver allows for communication. Okay, the same thing. Sliver installation. I'm running Sliver on. Okay, here in this particular blog, they covered the Sliver installation in a single command, but you must understand the architecture of Sliver to understand it better. First of all, let me get into this Sliver GitHub page so that I can show you what are all the elements of Sliver by default you will be installing. If you see, there are two major elements in Sliver. One is Sliver server, another one is Sliver client. So it follows, the C2 server itself follows client server architecture. Okay, so you can see it can be installed on various operating systems, including FreeBSD, Linux, Mac OS, Windows, and Darwin. I mean, it is widely supported, so it can be installed on various operating system. Now, the interesting part is what's the difference between Sliver client and Sliver server? So let me tell you that. So for that, maybe if I go to this architecture, you'll be able to understand. So here they gave the architecture of the Sliver itself. And you can see the Sliver client and Sliver server. The Sliver server is actually the major part of C2, the Sliver C2, because this is the Sliver server where it's like acting like a middle point if you see this image. So the implant is nothing but the software that we planted on the victim's machine. So the victim's machine is actually going to communicate the Sliver server. The Sliver server is actually kind of a middle part, midpoint, where the Sliver client, which is nothing but ourself, the user, the not the the C2 operator who is conducting the C2 operation. So the Sliver client is used by this C2 operator, and the Sliver clients connect the Sliver server, and the Sliver server, this is where all the beacons communicating. So the Sliver server is the major part here. So if you see, the Sliver server is also the Sliver server executable and manages the internal database, starts and stops network listeners such as C2 listeners. Though there are other types, the main interface used to interact with the server is gRPC interface. So just the communication protocol they gave. And the Sliver client is actually the client console is the primary user interface used to interact with the Sliver server. Note that the most of the code the server console is actually a client console. So if you open both Sliver server and the Sliver client binary, if you try to run the help menu, you will only see one different, which is about the operator profile. I'll tell you what is operator profile. Operator profile is actually defines the list of operators who are authorized to access the C2 server. So that is what the purpose of this operator profile is all about. Okay, so for the better understanding, so let's go and read this particular script. So the script is supplied by the sliver.sh website, which is the official Sliver site. So I already downloaded this file. Anyway, I'm re-downloading them. Let me go to this and open it with Sublime Text. Okay, now this is the particular script that we run by simply executing this one-liner. So it's gonna curl this and sudo it into bash. And let's read through this to understand this installation better. So you'll be understanding its architecture. Okay, now Sliver, some public key, Sliver platform. This is for Linux, and it should run as root. So that's what it ensures. And installing the dependencies, and you can see its dependency: minisign, curl, build essential, git. So these are all the dependent applications. So it installs them. Then if it is a Red Hat based OS, then it installs by using yum. If it is Debian, then it uses apt, package manager. If it is Arc based, Arch Linux based, then it uses pacman. So this particular code block simply installs the dependencies. Okay, I think it better now. View word wrap. Okay, now if I verify the tools are installed, once they installed the tools, it actually verifies that. Then it switches the directory to root. Then what it does, it actually downloads and unpacks the Sliver server. The first stuff it does, it downloads the Sliver server. So it checks the architecture. Based on the architecture, it picks whether it is x86, AMD, or anything else. Okay, so based on that, it chooses the package from the GitHub repo. All right, now fetching the latest Sliver releases. So it makes sure it fetches the latest one. Then it downloads both Sliver server and Sliver client. Yes, downloads both Sliver server and Sliver client, and it keeps the Sliver server here in the root directory and Sliver client in the root directory. So if you get into this root directory, you will see the Sliver server file, and let's see, it also unpacks the Sliver server and then the Sliver client. So it sets the permission to the Sliver client, because the Sliver client, as an end user, they're going to use Sliver client often. And see this Sliver client, it gets copied into user local bin directory in the name Sliver client. Then they are creating a link, a symlink to this Sliver client, and it will be called as Sliver. So whenever we call simply Sliver, it's going to execute this Sliver client. And for this particular symlink, they are also modifying the permission. So this is how they installs. And another interesting stuff is this Sliver server should be running as the Sliver server should be running as a service. So that's what they do now. They're actually simply configuring it as a service. So what happens during every reboot? I guess during every reboot, it's going to stop. So that we need to start this Sliver service manually. Since the Sliver server is running as a service, so it is quite easy for us to just use the Sliver client. Look at this one. So they are configuring the Sliver service, and in this Sliver service, they are running the Sliver server actually. So the Sliver server, that's what is done. And they're actually changing the owner, changing the privilege, and systemctl start Sliver. So this is what starts the Sliver service. So once the Sliver service started, it is possible to simply use Sliver command to access the Sliver server via Sliver client. So look at this one. So here's the Sliver. I think this one is actually configuration, local configuration. So what it does, in the root directory, within the Sliver client directory, there is a config directory, and in that they are actually setting up the Sliver server operator. They are also configuring the operator here in the Sliver server. So here is the Sliver server, the operator configuration. The default operator name is root, and the local host and the permission all. So this is the operator setting. And once the server client is done, they are actually changing the owner to root. And apart from that, what else this code does? Sliver client configuration, and again they're creating another client configuration with that local username. So I think they create two operator profile. One is root profile, another one is that particular user profile. So that's what is happening right now. Now I have installed, I have already installed Sliver in my machine. So I'm going to verify my installation now. So let me go and start this uh, Tmux session. Tmux new, yes, Sliver. Okay, I'm just opening multiple tabs. Okay, now I got this. Let me check the availability of Sliver. I have the Sliver now. If I just simply ls-la, it's gonna show the symlink. The symlink is actually points to this binary. So if you just check the file against this, it is the actual Sliver client. So if I simply execute Sliver --help, it's gonna start the help menu. In help menu, I'm seeing few things. Let's see. I think -h. It says import version help. Okay, let's see. How about help? Sliver -h. Okay, so this is the help menu, and let me check the root directory, because we've seen in the root directory only the Sliver server is got Sliver server got installed, and here is the Sliver server and here is the Sliver client. So let me run this. Okay, this is the Sliver client, and here's the Sliver server. I will show you the difference between Sliver server and Sliver client. Help. And if you see, the Sliver server is actually having more features, including the operator. The operator is only specific to Sliver server, because in Sliver server only you can define the operator profiles. Okay, let's see. Simply do this. So it's gonna open the Sliver server for us, and from this I'll be able to see the list of detailed features in the help menu. I can see the payload, network, generic, multiplayer. Yeah, this multiplayer part is actually specific to Sliver server, because this is where we are defining a new operator, kicking off the operator, and enabling the multiplayer mode. That means a Sliver C2 server can be accessed by multiple operators, C2 operators. So that's the thing. And I'm just exiting it, accessing Sliver client now. Let's see how it shows. Now you can see it's connecting to localhost. This port number it is showing. So this is the Sliver port 31337. So it internally connects. The client internally connects to this particular port to reach the Sliver server. Now connection to the server is failed because the service is not running, the Sliver service. So let me show that. systemctl status Sliver. If I see, now the Sliver service status is disabled. Now I need to do, what I need to do is, so it is enabled but it is not running. Now what I can do, I can just check the status to start this. I think the word is start Sliver. It is asking for a password because it should run as a root. Now I give the password, I authenticated. If I see the status of this Sliver, now the Sliver server is running, and the Sliver server actually executes the Sliver server binary. This particular service executes. So let me read this file. Permission denied. I go and run it with sudo, and if you see, this particular binary is gets executed in this service. So which is Sliver server. Now the Sliver service running. Now let me show you SS LUNT B. You can see the port 31337. So this is the Sliver port. So on this port only Sliver server is running. Okay. And now what I can do, I simply connect Sliver. Earlier, when I just call this Sliver, it was not connecting. It was showing an error. Now, if I try to connect this, I'm able to connect to Sliver server. Now my Sliver client got connected to Sliver server. If I see help, I could see every help menu which was present in the Sliver server except the operator configuration, the multiplayer part that we have seen in the Sliver server. So except that, it is possible to see every other thing. Now we actually have the full Sliver C2 setup. It is actually done. So you need not to install every Sliver client and Sliver server and configure the operator profile and setting up and starting the Sliver server every time. You need not to do that. Instead, you can simply use this one line command to install the Sliver on your machine. Once you have installed, it will start the Sliver server for the first time. But after every reboot, you need to restart the Sliver service by using this systemctl start Sliver command. So it's going to start your Sliver server. So once the Sliver server is started, all you need to do is to start your Sliver client by simply using a Sliver command. So it's going to start, it's going to do the rest for you. Okay. So this is all about setting up a Sliver. So I hope I tried explaining it in a better way. Hope you really liked it. From our next stream, from our next video, we are going to do this Sliver exploration. So we are going to bring another VM or another machine. So we're going to use it as our victim machine. So we're going to do some C2 operation. So let's put some install or some implant or beacon into the. Let's put some implant on our victim VM and try to establish a session or a beacon and try to explore this Sliver. Okay, so that's what I'm planning to do. All right, I think for now it is done. Hope you really liked it. If you really did, do consider liking, commenting, and subscribing this channel. I'll catch you next time with another exciting one. And till then, I'm signing off. Cheers, and I love you all. Thank you so much.